Hi guys, I'm Johan Kikilis coming to you from the bottom of Africa, and welcome to what is the third vlog on my channel. If you haven't seen the first two, I want to encourage you to watch it so you can get some context of what we're talking about. We're talking about how to build society up again, basically. Now, in my last talk, I discussed the fact that there is a lot of unresolved hurt and pain in many countries today, probably the whole world. And this hurt, if it is left unresolved, can often manifest itself into anger and become more negative. Now, that leads me to today's talk, and I want to talk about anger. You know, this morning again, every morning I open up the newspapers of news around the world, and the dominant theme, as it's been the last few weeks, was one of anger. Um, on every continent were people groups that were angry, either with government or with society or with something. There's just a lot of anger. And this anger is beginning to manifest as violence and destruction, and it is causing a lot of hurt and a lot of heartache. Okay. Now, I want to share some perspectives around this and what we as Christians can do regarding this anger. But firstly, I want to share a little story. And I hope I can get a point across through this. Back in 2007, I started doing prison ministry, and I did it. I started in Pollsmoor Prison, which is in Cape Town. If you don't know Pollsmoor Prison, I highly recommend that you YouTube Ross Kemp's on gangs in Cape Town, and you'll get a very good idea. He shot it in Pollsmoor Prison around the same time. It's the same prison. It's the same people that I was amongst every day for 3 years, and you'll get a good sense of what it's about. But back in late 2007, early 2008, there was a lot of gang violence in the prison, and one of the management came to me and said, please would I run anger management courses to calm these guys down. So I said, of course, because what it did was it opened up doors to get into places that I wasn't able to get into. And over the next 3 years, I ran these anger management courses, and I sat with hundreds and hundreds of gangsters, of inmates, of very violent people. Now, I've showed the Ross Kemp video to quite a number of the interns that have come and worked for me over the years, and all of them are shocked. And I always say, what do you see? And they say, yeah, these guys are angry and they're violent, and you know, they're animals. And they leave it there. That's how they look at it. But I see things differently. You know, what have I observed? And I just want to throw out some thoughts here. So over the last 15 years, I've sat with hundreds, maybe a few thousand gangsters and criminals and very violent people, both perpetrators and victims as well. But I've noticed a trend, and I'm speaking now specifically here in South Africa, but it's probably very similar to where you are around the world. Firstly, and I'm not exaggerating, but 9 out of 10 of these guys grew up without a father. The father abandoned them. They had no idea who the father was. All they did know who the father was, and they really wanted nothing to do with him. And some might say, you're exaggerating. 9 out of 10? Well, let's put it this way. If I sat with 200 or 300 individuals in a year, I could probably count 5 when I asked the question, is your father present? That agreed. Most of the time it was no, I don't know my father, or I want nothing to do with him. The second thing that came out strongly is that their mother never loved them and often abused them. And the main reason for them saying, in their words, the main reason they were abused by their mother was because their mother said that they reminded her of the father. So she took out her anger towards the father on these boys. The third issue was the mothers often got boyfriends or partners, and they pushed the son out of the way. The sons were rejected. They just became like spare tires in the house. The next thing, which sadly in Cape Town is an enormous problem, is these men were physically and sexually, or sexually, often both, abused. And then lastly, they constantly witnessed abuse in the home or violence outside on the streets. Cape Town is very violent in some places, and this just became normal. So that's almost learned. You begin to think that this is normal life. And the last category would be with many of the older inmates that I've worked with, the ones over 40. Not many of them, because most gangsters don't reach that age, but they still could remember the injustice of apartheid. And that is very real, and we'll talk about that another time. But in my experience with gangsters and prisoners in the last 15 years, I've noted that they went on to drug use, they went on to alcohol use, and this normally started roughly pre-teens, 10, 11, 12. It always is the same story. You know, they started smoking weed, dacha, marijuana, whatever you call it. More recently, kids are starting with tic, crystal meth, in some cases heroin. But they went on to drugs or alcohol to start numbing the pain. Then they ran into problems at school, and so they dropped out of school. And then they ran into problems with the law. And then before they knew it, their family and the whole community had condemned them and chased them away. Then what usually happens is by ages 15 or 16, they turn to the only people left in the community whose arms are open wide, and that is the gangs. And what happens after that? Well, it's always the same. It never ends well. Many of them go back to prison. It's a revolving door in and out of prison. Quite a large number land up in mental institutes, particularly after age 25 onwards. I see a lot of schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and serious depression. Come on. Also, that's also because of years of drug use. Okay, but most often it lands up in a very, very cruel death. Now, my country, as a result of all of this, is rife with gangs. America is rife with gangs. Europe is becoming a gang problem as well. Asia has got a gang problem. Australia, New Zealand, all these places, the rest of Africa, have got gang problems. And as I've pointed out, the root of the problem is hurt. There's an old cliche that says, hurt people, and that is so true. These guys were hurt. Nobody ever cared, and as a result they became angry, and one day they went out and hurt somebody else. It's interesting, I have sat with hurt people. There's one in particular, a guy who was a hitman. He was a very high up gangster. And I sat with him, and the prison official said to me, nothing can be done with this guy. He's a lost cause. They often said that. I don't believe that there is a lost cause. But we went up onto the roof, and we had a chat, him and I. And you know, I just asked him a few questions about himself and his childhood, and he started sobbing. He cried his heart out about how his mother just never loved him or hugged him or showed affection, and that's all that he wanted. And he was an older guy. He was probably close to 40, and he'd spent all of his adult life in prison. The point of this video is to simply, I want to show you that we need to look past the anger. We need to look past all the violence. We must remember that people are people. God created everybody equal, and He put emotions inside of us. And anger is not wrong. It's a reaction, often to an injustice that happened against us. We have got a world of very angry people who were hurt, who were neglected, who were unloved. And if this anger is left unchecked, it has got the power to destroy. It is not just the person, and it often does, but the entire community as well, which is what we're beginning to see. The hurt that caused the anger can be healed. I am living proof of that. I can share hundreds of stories, as can many others, that hurt does not have to stay inside. In Afrikaans, well, in the communities I work in, I say, dat frit your kop, which means it eats away at your mind and your heart. Hurt does not have to do that. Next video, we're going to look at how do we begin to address the hurt that is the root of so many of our problems in society. Thanks for watching.